Welcome to Procurious's Bravo podcast series, celebrating women in procurement. I'm Hugo Bridd, Content Director for Procurious, and I'm delighted to be a part of this series sponsored by Telstra, featuring inspirational stories and career tips from 5 women with some very valuable advice to share. Today, we're joined by Carlee McGowan, who is General Manager of Planning at Telstra based out of Sydney. Carlee has extensive end-to-end supply chain experience and has a real passion for driving best practice opportunities. She's worked for over 25 years in the field across sectors including FMCG, retail, telco, and in international environments. So Carlee, for my first question, why do you think supply chain is such a great career destination?
Well, that's an easy one. Firstly, it's because you can go anywhere in the world or across any industry and you'll find and apply supply chain principles. That would be from major telcos with retail and industrial arms, like I'm in, to fast-moving consumer goods, medical, defence, even to the mum or dad at home trying to get the kids to school in full on time, or to arranging aid to devastated regions in the world. So you can actually take this big, you can go. Secondly, it is really tangible. You can either get it to the final destination in full on time at the lowest cost, or you can learn about how to achieve the same outcome better next time. It's a continuous improvement journey. And finally, yet not exhaustively, if done correctly, you can become the trusted business advisor, the function that forecasts where the business is headed and predicts what resources you need to get there. So it's really enjoyable.
We do like that term, trusted business advisor at Procurious. We use that a lot. So what do you see as the biggest challenge or challenges facing supply chain managers as we move into 2019?
I actually think it's timely data and having that data correctly integrated within your planning, forecasting and operating tools. Now, with full transparency of data, you can actually accurately identify where your potential risks are and galvanise the organisation to mitigate those risks for the best outcome for your customer and ultimately your own business. I was at a recent seminar and they had recently put in an end-to-end data migration with robotics. And what they found is within the first 6 months, it actually reduced their costs by 30%. So I really believe that the integration of the data and the transparency of that data is the next biggest challenge or opportunity for supply chain.
What are the top 3 skills you look for when hiring for your supply chain team?
I can answer this one easily because I've just recently hired a whole bunch of new people. So firstly, it's having an analytical mind. So the ability to look at something, manipulate it, and then come up with a recommendation and make the decision on that recommendation. Sometimes I even go as far as giving them a study in Excel and asking them to determine where improvements can be made and what conclusions they would draw. So this to me is really important because some people's minds are very analytical and some people's minds aren't so analytical. Secondly, it's the ability to influence. And I think that this is something that you would find in any job. But you can have the smartest mind in the world. However, if you can't present your ideas in a manner that your colleagues, stakeholders can understand it, you won't get anywhere near as many results or be as an effective supply chain person as the person who can influence. And thirdly, what I look for is a continuous improvement mindset. You'll never get everything right all the time. So what you need to do is have this continuous improvement mindset so that any learnings that you actually get from your day-to-day and from others, you apply to the processes and procedures and the systems that you're working with. So if I can identify that a person can have a failure but can learn from those failures, they're much more valuable to me and my team than any other person. It also shows me that that they have a bit of resilience as well to survive the challenges that maybe a supply chain will throw up at them.
That's great. And as you may know, one of the other guests in this podcast series is Julie Masters, who's the CEO of Influence Nation, and she was actually one of our guest speakers at the Sydney Big Ideas Summit. Julie is very big on the power of storytelling and how influence is an absolute key skill or attribute. Just if you're going to succeed at all in getting a big idea across the line, especially in these big organisations that are set up to say no in many cases, you need to be able to influence.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And getting that balance between the analytical person and the influencer person is a good balance.
That's right. So, for my next question, moving from human skills more across to the technology side, what would you say is the number one technology on the horizon that's really going to make an impact on your profession?
Look, it's quite funny. If you look at technology in itself, it's already impacted supply chains exponentially. So technology has actually raised customers' expectations of supply chain. So customers are now looking for 24/7 ability to shop and track items. And it means that as a supply chain industry, we have to be faster, we have to act with urgency, we have to have accurate data available. And you have to enable your customers to have transparency of, I guess, your system and what's going on. So all the technology now has really raised the expectations that people have got on organisations. And if you're an organisation that doesn't have that transparency of your end-to-end supply chain available to your customers, they will judge you as not necessarily an organisation that is as trustworthy as perhaps an organisation that does provide that information. So that then leads you to the ask of organisations to then build within their end-to-end systems integration of data so that they can display that very quickly and very easily and have that information readily available to all customers. So to me, our very immediate influence on supply chain is that linking of all that data together to really ensure that you have the perfect fulfillment cycle in end-to-end.
That's a great point, and I think one of the other things is the concept of real-time information. So speed of data is so important when you think of it in terms of, say, driving down the freeway. If your speedo is showing the speed you were going yesterday rather than the speed you're going today, I mean that's not going to help you very much. So having that with full transparency,
very very true. And the same thing is that if you have multiple customers requesting the same thing in a limited supply situation, you end up with disappointed customers or customers with not the full information. So real time is becoming a norm rather than a best in class technology to have.
That's great. I'm just picking up on the fact, Carlee, that you mentioned the customers a few times in your responses to these questions. So do you think a supply chain professional should really be quite close to the customer? I mean, traditionally it's been a bit of a backroom function that hasn't had that touch point at all until the past 5 to 10 years.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many opportunities in understanding your customer. And if you don't understand your customer, you actually might set up your supply chain that, I guess, is not set up to service the customer as to what their needs are. Or you might misunderstand what the customer's needs are and then waste a lot of money or effort or time on an area that maybe the customer doesn't necessarily value. So, for example, I worked with a previous customer before, and they valued first in, first out as one of their key KPIs. And as a supply chain organisation, we actually didn't monitor or track that at all. And we had no idea that this was upsetting their whole supply chain and causing a whole lot of wasted energy and time in their supply chains. Now, just with a small tweak of our supply chain and setting up different processes and systems, we were able to exponentially increase the satisfaction of that customer with a very small change in our processes internally. But without actually understanding that, we would have continued to, or maybe even lost that customer overall, because in their eyes, we weren't meeting their service targets.
Great point. And for my final question, we have a bit of a overarching theme for this podcast series, which is about Bravo and what we call our Women in Procurement campaign on Procurious. And the other theme that we really touch on is courage in your personal life and in your work life. So can you tell us about a time when you've really had to draw upon courage in your own career?
Oh, there are so many times that I've had to draw courage in my career, and so many examples. But perhaps if I can draw on the most recent example, we have the ambition at the moment of Telstra as being recognised as the most improved supply chain and a benchmark for the industry, if not outside it as well. So we're a little bit ambitious. So, but to achieve this, what we're engaging in is a total supply chain transformation. So we've built up the people, the systems, the processes, all ground up to set us up for, I guess, a benchmark supply chain solution. Whilst we're doing this, we're also changing our distribution centre. So it's so we decided to take something huge and then make it even bigger. As you can appreciate, this amount of change is quite significant, and there has been many times that I've had to call on courage and to really believe in ourselves and to motivate the team and the stakeholders and our fellow supply chain colleagues to ensure that not only we meet these targets, but we smash them out of the park. So it's a massive undertaking and one in which I don't think many organisations have embarked on previously. So there are a number of times that you sit there and go, oh, take a breath and remind ourselves how momentous this occasion is, and I guess draw on your courage or your self-belief to keep moving forward and to keep achieving the results. So we're having a bit of fun.
Fantastic. Well, it looks like that's all we have time for, Carlee. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Bravo podcast series sponsored by Telstra. This series will be made available in the Procurious Learning section.